everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for election night coverage as results are starting to come in fast and furious. I'd like to welcome back my primary night guests, Professor of Communications at Rhode Island College, Val Enders. Thanks for joining us. Former United States Senator, Rhode Island Governor, Mayor of Warwick, Lincoln Chafee, thank you for coming in. Want to give folks some updates here. With 49% of the state reporting, Governor Gina Raimondo is up 51% to Alan Fung at 39%. Again, just under half of the state reporting. Here in Providence, with a little over 48% reporting, Mayor Jorge Elorza has a 2-to-1 lead over challenger Diane Dee Whitman. So numbers are continuing to come in. We'll get updates from behind us here in the studio. But let's talk about that statewide race. It seems just yesterday we were here talking about the primary. Of course, we saw back in 2014 Governor Gina Raimondo only eking out a victory with a little over 40%. That 51% likely won't be the final number, but Governor Chafee, talk with us a little bit about your thoughts. Are you surprised at that number and how this election has played out?
No, the economy's good, Kate, and it's like in the 90s when Lincoln Almond was winning a re-election very easily. And I served as mayor in the 90s, and the economy nationally is doing very well right now, so that's always good for incumbents. And Governor Raimondo had the fortunate for her electoral chances of having Joe Trillo in the race, and you just can't split the vote of the anti-votes, especially in a good economy. So this was pretty much a slam dunk right from the get-go.
Val, thoughts on those numbers that we're starting to see coming in?
Well, I think it will be a big boost for the governor when she starts her second term. I think she probably wanted to be over 50%, so if that holds, that gives her a bit more of a mandate than she's had in the past. But I agree with the governor. Certainly it's hard to beat an incumbent in a good economy. It's nearly impossible.
Let's talk a little bit about the Republican and independent side of things. As someone who's been a Republican, Democrat, and independent, what were your thoughts when you saw this play out? Of course, a camp from Mayor Alan Fung has said that Joe Trillo is in cahoots with the governor. But you know, you've seen the Republican Party. You've been part of the Republican Party here in the state. I don't want to say deja vu. Bob Healy and Joe Trillo are certainly two distinctly different animals. But as we see, you've been in three-way races before. What were your thoughts with the fallout with the Republican Party and Joe Trillo?
Well, it was smart politics, and I wouldn't guess that there isn't collusion. And even in the primary, Spencer Dickinson, where'd he get his money? Where'd those billboards? Where'd that money come from?
A little wary of Matt Brown.
Yeah, and I'm sure the governor wanted a three-way race, have split the vote, and it's not illegal. It's good strategy, and the same thing happened in the general, getting Joe Trillo, or however they did it, into the race, and it was pretty much over once you had the two Republicans running against one Democrat. Just in the good economies, Governor Raimondo had an easy path to re-election.
Any regrets not tossing your hat in the ring?
None at all.
Val, let's talk a little bit from the communication standpoint. Obviously, Joe Trillo, former campaign chair for President Donald Trump here in Rhode Island. Certainly Mayor Alan Fung has his ardent supporters, but within that Republican Party there are voters who are looking for that other option, and certainly voters and supporters, ardent supporters of Donald Trump. So how did you see that playing out, especially here in Rhode Island and Joe Trillo's ability to capture some of that Rhode Island vote?
Well, the bottom line is that it split the Republican Party. And part of the problem was that Alan Fung didn't run even the same race that he ran in 2014. And he was silent much of the time, and he was placed in an awkward position about whether he should support the president or not. And that, I think, ultimately hurt him. And she was able to run a pretty substantial issues campaign. And so his campaign was left with merely attacking her. And it's very difficult to win a race when you're not giving the audience a way to, or a path to vote for you, giving them reasons to vote for you. So in many ways, I thought she ran a very good campaign, and we all know she had a lot of money, a great ground game in addition to that. And his campaign was not well run.
So we just got some new numbers in. Obviously, one of the races that's incredibly close that most of Rhode Island is keeping an eye on is House District 15 Speaker Nick Mattiello's district against Republican challenger Steve Frias. A rematch of 2016 with a little over 53% reporting Nick Mattiello at just over 50 and Steve Frias 49 and change. Now again, remember back in 2016 at the end of election night, up in the ballots was Steve Frias, but with paper, again, took time after that to be counted. Mattiello emerged victorious. This is it was contentious in 16. It's inordinately more contentious now that we've seen such a focus on the speaker's race, especially within the last few weeks with a number of issues, either dealing with sexual harassment at the State House and more, with groups coming out very strongly. You've been governor. Talk with us a little bit about working with that Speaker of the House, and are you surprised to see this sort of effort by a number of groups basically calling to check the power of Nick Mattiello?
I haven't seen this before, where the speaker's taken on with such a vigorous campaign. Happened 2 years ago, of course, as you referred to those absentee ballots, and Steve Frias coming back and doing it again 2 years later. I just hadn't seen it before. Murphy or Harwood or any other DeAngelis, any of the speakers usually just coast and cruise to victory. So this is a test in one little district. We have one race in Rhode Island now that's got some drama to it.
Yeah.
The rest of them are pretty much over, and we'll see what happens tonight. And maybe we'll go to absentee ballots again.
Well, it is an interesting premise, right? You do have a Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello, while a Democrat, is fairly conservative, obviously from the conservative vein, Steve Frias. The general school of thought, obviously, is who would be the next speaker if Steve Frias were to unseat Nick Mattiello. And for specifically the voters of House District 15, for folks who had supported the speaker in the past, the potential for perhaps a more progressive speaker. Do you think that really resonated with them as they probably are hitting the polls tonight?
I think probably so, and this may have been inevitable that this would happen because, again, in Rhode Island, when you have a one-party state, which is essentially a one-party state, you have an awfully big tent. And he clearly represents the more conservative side, and we're in that time period where he disappointed a lot of women at the State House and women's groups at the State House. And so I think in many ways I'm a little surprised that this hasn't happened before.
Well, keeping a close eye again on the speaker's race, let's tack a little bit here to Providence in the mayoral race, having previously been a mayor of a city here. In Rhode Island, incumbent Mayor Jorge Elorza, again with over 50% reporting, looks like he has a 2-to-1 lead over challenger Diane Dede Whitman. Talk with us a little bit about looking at this race. We had Ray Rickman on and Rob Horowitz on earlier. A lot of the talk was the timing of Diane Dede Whitman entering the race as an independent. And we did see some pushback from the Elorza administration to her and her ties to Buddy Cianci. Mayoral politics are unique in and of themselves. What were your thoughts as you looked at this Providence race?
Well, once again, going back to the good economy, it's tough to beat an incumbent in a good economy. And a city depends on just natural economic growth for revenue, and when that's coming in, you don't have to raise taxes, and that's what Mayor Elorza has benefited from. So, and Dede Whitman getting in so late, absolutely, just could not get any momentum coming in so late. And the Buddy Cianci Association, I think to a lesser degree, was an issue. I think getting in late in a good economy, keeping those taxes down for Mayor Elorza with a good economy, it's a lot easier to do. And so he's going to coast to re-election.
We just have some updated numbers with a 90% reporting in House District 15. Nick Mattiello up by 200 votes. Now remember, in 16, after paper, I believe he won with 86. Again, this looks like the close race of the evening. But I want to talk with you a little bit about the mayor's race. And it's interesting as you talk about the economy before we then go national and sort of the juxtaposition of local versus national when folks are at the ballot and what we might see with Congress. How have you seen this mayoral race playing out? And it was really a timing issue. Had Diane Dede Whitman started earlier, do you think things might have been different? Or as the former governor said, that the economy really looks to be carrying the current mayor to victory?
I think yes to both. And actually, it's difficult at the timing. For her, timing wasn't good, and she couldn't have established the kind of ground game that she really needed to. But she is establishing name recognition should she want to challenge again, and so that in itself may be one of her goals.
Well, we'll see moving forward, because what will be clearly especially interesting if Governor Gina Raimondo is reelected looking towards 2022. There's talk that Mayor Jorge Elorza did not spend much at all during this election cycle putting together a pretty formidable war chest. We did catch up with the governor this morning, and the question was asked, if reelected, will she serve out 4 terms? Do you have an expectation that she'll be there through the 4, or any possibility that DC could come calling?
Well, there's a lot of what ifs, isn't there? I mean, we're
2020.
Yes, we're first talking about electing a Democratic president and then maybe finding a place in the cabinet. And I think that was more realistic when she had her close ties to Hillary, but who knows what's going to happen in 2020. So I think that's really difficult to speculate.
And one of the things that...
I'd also add to that, Kate, I don't think anybody in Rhode Island would say that Governor Raimondo is not ambitious. So
that's right. That's
another
right.
step to be taken.
Yes.
It is very interesting. You know, she did again profess her desire to stay for an additional 4 years if reelected. But with 2020 coming, her name's often on a lot of shortlists. This is no surprise that we've seen moving forward. And we've talked about this. But again, now we're looking, if we see these final numbers come in a lot higher than they had back in 14. Does that is that sort of that double-edged sword for her? Gives her, as you said, maybe perhaps a little bit more of a mandate, but then does that make her more desirable? No one's really looking for the blessing of the Rhode Island electorate, if you will.
That's right. That's right.
But again, we've always talked about that disconnect. But now again, it looks like the economy is doing better. She's moving up in popularity.
Yes.
Does that improve her cachet?
Oh, I think it does. And let's not forget what kind of a fundraiser she is, both inside the state and nationally. And that's part of the game of thinking about higher levels of politics. And particularly if you're talking about a run for the presidency at some time. And she's proven herself. For a governor, she's an amazing fundraiser.
So let's go national, let's look at Congress, and we've discussed the strength of economy here playing in well at the local level. Here we have now what looks to be a referendum on the administration of President Donald Trump and a strong economy, but yep, there's talk of this blue wave, and we'll see tonight where that ends up. What do you anticipate, you know, the House, Senate, and what do you think things are going to shake up looking like after tonight?
Well, Kate, since 1910, that's 37 midterm elections, the president in power has lost 27 times, and only 3 times, 1932, 1998, and 2002, has the president gained seats in the House in the midterms. It just, the overwhelming odds are that Donald Trump is going to lose seats in the House. Will that be enough for the Democrats to take over? I, for one, still don't think so. I hope so as a Democrat, but I still don't think so. He's going to, I'm sure, lose seats because of that precedent. But this is a different animal, this Donald Trump, and so unpredictable as to how the electorate is going to respond.
Yes.
And so we'll see. It's going to be that's going to be something very interesting
That's
tonight.
what we will be
see
watching
what happens
closely.
in the House. I don't think the Senate's really in play, but that'll be fun to watch.
Well, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think it felt a little bit safer for the House to get those 23 plus seats. But since then, he certainly has galvanized his base. And I think the higher voter turnout that we're seeing can go both ways. And so who knows? The Senate is very, very difficult, and I don't think that they've seen this kind of a dim picture for the Senate since the early 1900s. And so there's an awful lot of seats to make up for there that would be in contention. And it would be very difficult statistically to be able to take the Senate. But the House is a real possibility, but I think we have to hold out because we don't know what's happening with Trump's base. We know the Democrats came out in an attempt for a blue wave, but there may be, you know,
some red wave
that's right,
under the surface.
that's right,
coming
absolutely.
out as well. Again,
Yes.
highly unanticipated in 2016, accepted by some. Here in Rhode Island, was talking with strategist Rob Horowitz and others as well. Again, the higher turnout as it's looking here certainly benefits the Democrats, as you said, being a fairly one-party state. But nationally, that's up for grabs.
It is. It is. Like I said before, he has this unique ability, and I agree with the governor, to galvanize his base. We've not seen this before in the strangest ways. It breaks every political playbook we've ever seen, but he is able to deliver his votes from the red side. So we don't know.
So speaking of votes, again with that 90% reporting, waiting for some additional updates here with the speaker. I believe it was published this week the number of Democrats who had come out in opposition to the current speakership of Nick Mattiello, as well as some candidates as well. If he is to prevail, do we see to the victor goes the spoils and some potential issues for the progressives having come out so vociferously against the speaker?
I think the professor and I agreed backstage that he holds on to his speakership. Looks like he's going to get reelected. The progressives are still not strong enough in the House. And I think there'll be some respect that he beat back this challenge again. He fought hard, 2 elections in a row, and if he prevails, I think they'll get some respect from his members. And he's not a terrible speaker. I mean, he tries to bring people together, and it's not easy. It's one of the hardest jobs, and I think people respect that in the chamber.
So here we are. It is now 8:45. Again, results are coming in. We are publishing on GoLocal. Mattiello is, in fact, claiming victory this evening over Republican challenger Steve Frias. Again, deja vu from 2016, except tonight he is up in the polls today, not down as he had been. Again, last we'd had that he was up over 200 votes. We'll have those final vote counts for you on GoLocal Prov. As we start to look to wrap up here, any surprises this election season? You're both veteran politicos. Hard to surprise you on any sort of fronts, but especially here in Rhode Island. Any takeaways, and again, anything that you hadn't really expected?
Well, I'm seeing just the disintegration of the Republican Party here in Rhode Island. No candidate for Attorney General. For the second cycle, since 2016, there's no Republicans elected anywhere in the state of Rhode Island, in the statewide offices, Congress, Senate. That just hasn't happened since early 60s, I believe. Now it's happened twice, and not even getting candidates to run.
Yes.
The party's just disintegrating. And then to have 2 candidates, Joe Trillo and Alan Fung, and have Alan Fung, who might have had a chance to win, challenged by Patricia Morgan in the primary, it's a disaster. And
yes.
That's just not good for democracy.
I agree, and it's unthinkable that we have a statewide office where we don't have a major party candidate. And so that's a problem. But looking ahead, I think it'll be an interesting race. The next gubernatorial race will be very interesting as at least the Democrats line up for it.
Indeed, I have to say we had former congressional candidate Brendan Doherty here earlier in the studio. He might have tossed out a couple names, but clearly looking at 2020 again after we see where Congress falls after this evening, and again 2022 here, because when there's that open slate, it is just moths to the trough.
That's right. That's right.
To 2020.
Yes.
On to 2020, on to 2022. But of course, we'll have results from 2018 on GoLocalProv.com. I want to thank everyone who came into the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center today. Former Superintendent of the Rhode Island State Police, Brendan Doherty. Democratic consultant Rob Horowitz. Former State Representative Ray Rickman. Head of the Rhode Island Latino PAC, Joseph Molina Flynn. I'd like to thank Spencer Sullivan with Lean Campaign Strategies down in Virginia for Skyping in earlier today. And of course, Val Enders from Rhode Island College.
Thank you, Kate.
Lincoln Chafee, former United States Senator, Rhode Island Governor, and of course, Mayor of Warwick. Be sure to stay tuned to GoLocalProv.com as we continue to bring you these election results as they are breaking. Again, Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello, claiming victory tonight on election night. We look forward to bringing you more coverage tomorrow when we check in with Jennifer Lawless at the University of Virginia, and GoLocal columnist Bob Whitcomb joins us here in studio. So thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.